Please be seated. I'm going to ask the ushers if you would direct latecomers down to the front of the space. We have plenty of seats down front, behind the senior class and behind the faculty. So please fill in those spaces. Gentlemen, please take your seats with some dispatch. Good morning. Good morning. Chairman Davidson, President Wilson, other trustees, alumni, faculty, staff, members of the senior class, students, parents, and friends. It is my distinct honor to declare the 146th Founders Day Convocation now in session. We will now have the Reverend Dr. Lawrence Edward Carter, Sr., Dean of the Martin Luther King Jr. International Chapel, to do the invocation. Dean Carter.
All who are able, please rise. I now invite the 22nd pastor of historic Old Silver Bluff Springfield Baptist Church in Augusta, Georgia, where Morehouse was founded, Reverend Hardy Spurgeon Bennings III, to come forth and light our candle of the mystique, symbolic of the college's brand, Effecta Ex Lux, light being the vortex of our brand. Let us pray. Thou most blessed, most glorious, the Ancient of Days, Almighty, victorious, thy great name we praise. We know, dear Spirit, that you are alive, that you neither slumber nor sleep, that the wrong shall fail and the right prevail. As it is your good pleasure on President Wilson's watch to open up the windows of heaven and bless the world once again through us. Standing in your strength, dear God, on this 146th college anniversary, we dare to be powerful. using our courage in the service of our vision, and activating our love and light for the healing of humanity. On this milestone Morehouse morning, we are remembering to remember that we didn't arrive here by accident. Because of your grace, dear Master, the walls of time may be hung with the portraits of William Jefferson White, Henry Lyman Morehouse, John Hope, and now John Sylvanus Wilson. For these strong Baptist Christians, their refusal to make excuses, their collaborating with destiny, and their passion for building, we give thee our sacred gratitude. And so we prepare ourselves to go from story to glory, to see the invisible and do the impossible by participating in a flash flood of growth, goodness, and greatness. Teach us the distinction between what frees us and what fools us, that we may respond effectively to the ethics of equality and the blessings of a constantly changing world, and honor our collective social contracts with our individual and global families. We consciously choose, dear God, to see so-called problems as a call for high resolve, to take our minds off of fear, weakness, victimization, and condemnation, and put them on reverence for all life, natural sincerity, gentleness, kindness, and supportiveness in the house of dreams, knowing that we are the start of an extraordinary transformation. And so, when we continue to walk the road less traveled, living, reflecting, and being the vision itself, answering our own prayers, authentically actualizing the change we want to see in the world, give us the assurance, dear God, that we are not causing you to repent for having created us, that we are honoring the wisdom of Dr. Wilson, multiplying your peace in the world, and thankfully remembering on this day dedicated to love that we always have been, are now, and will eternally remain your beloved. Amen. You may be seated.
Mr. President, it will take us a minute or two to make the adjustment and the pronunciation of your middle name. Us Southerners, either by birth or by conversion, are inclined to go with every syllable in the name. And so Sylvanus is what it appears to us. We will honor you in what is, in fact, Sylvanus. So please bear with us. Please come in quickly, gentlemen. Now that we're comfortably seated, let me ask you to please stand for the presentation of colors by our Navy ROCT Color Guard. The presentation of colors will be followed by the singing of the Star-Spangled Banner and Lift Every Voice and Sing. Please be seated. as we celebrate the 146th anniversary of the college's founding and the 100th anniversary of the naming of the institution, it bears recognition that these special events in the life of Morehouse intersect with other significant anniversaries in our country's history. The Emancipation Proclamation, which granted freedom and paved the way for progress among African American people, was issued by President Abraham Lincoln in January 1863, 150 years ago. And this year also marks the 50th anniversary of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech, which he delivered on the Washington Mall. I invite each of us to pause and reflect on what these occasions have meant to Black people in America. Freedom, justice, education, so inextricably interwoven and critical to the continued advancement of people of color and so many other Americans who seek better lives for themselves and the next generation. Our Founders Day is one of the most significant events held at the college during the academic year. On this occasion, we pay homage to those who have worked tirelessly to bring Morehouse to this moment in time, to this point in its inspiring history as a first-rate liberal arts college. For a sense of our story, I invite you to review the section of your program entitled History of Morehouse College. I also invite you to read the intriguing story of the naming of Morehouse in the section of the program entitled From the Atlanta Baptist College to Morehouse College, and to review the photographs of persons key to the early years of the development of Morehouse College located inside the back cover of your printed program. Today is also a time when we come together in a formal setting to recommit ourselves to the unrelenting pursuit of excellence. Morehouse College has had a solid and uncompromising reputation for 146 years. Our goal is to continue the viable legacies of the past and to fashion new prospects that will lead us to even greater heights as we move forward into a bright and promising future. We thank all of you for participating in today's events, as well as the other events that will take place during the remainder of the week. This, then, is the occasion. And now it's my honor to recognize members of the platform and the special guests who are here today. Let me apologize in advance if I should miss anyone. Please know that we welcome all of you and appreciate your presence. Certain persons on the program will be introduced later. I will now introduce members of the platform. As I call your name, please stand, and I ask the audience to kindly hold your applause until all members of the platform party have been introduced. Starting from my right, Mr. Kevin McGee, President of the Morehouse National Alumni Association. Dr. John Williams, Dean of the Division of Business and Economics. Dr. J.K. Haynes, Dean of the Division of Science and Mathematics. Mr. Andre Bertram, Vice President for Campus Operations. Dr. William Bynum, Vice President for Student Services. General James R. Hall, Trustee. Dr. Stanley Pritchett, President, Morris Brown College. Dr. Wiley Perdue, former Acting President of Morehouse College. Mrs. Sheila Jacobs, Interim Vice President for Business and Finance. Mr. Philip Howard, Vice President for Institutional Advancement. Dr. Paul Wiebe, Dean of General Education. Mrs. Loretta Parham, Director of the Robert Woodruff Library. In the second row, Mr. Henry Goodgame, Director of Alumni Relations. Mr. Andre Washington, President of the Student Government Association. Attorney Robin Crittenden, General Counsel. From my left, again on the second row, Reverend Hardy Bennings III, the founder's representative from Springfield Baptist Church. Reverend Ernest Brooks, Associate Campus Minister. Mrs. Karen Miller, Chief of Staff. Let's give all of the platform party members a round of applause. Will all the members of the Morehouse Board of Trustees please stand to be recognized? Trustees. All alumni, Morehouse men, please stand and be recognized. And for the first time of what I'm sure will be many times, the First Lady of the college, Dr. Carol S.B. Wilson. Let's give her a warm welcome. Is Mrs. Yvonne Gloster, wife of the late President Hugh Gloster, in the audience. Yvonne, please stand. Dr. June Hops, wife of the late Dr. John Hops, former Provost and Senior Vice President of Academic Affairs. Some very special guests today, the members of the family of Henry Lyman Morehouse, after whom the college was named, are here with us today, and I would ask them to please stand. Professor Roger Morehouse and his wife, Beulah. And his daughter, Dr. Crystal Morehouse. Welcome. Will my colleagues of the faculty and the staff please stand to be recognized? One of the activities that we have included in Founders Week celebration is Parents Weekend. I know that there are a number of parents and family members of our students who are present with us today. Would you please stand and be recognized? Miss Maroon and White and her court, are they present? There probably wasn't any need to ask if they were present because the beauty in this side of the room is obvious. Sitting in the audience immediately behind the men of the senior class are the men of the freshman class, the class of 2016. They are wearing their maroon blazers, signifying their journey toward excellence as they grow and develop during the next few years. Please stand and be recognized. Last, but by no means least, will all of the men of the Morehouse College class of 2013 please stand to be recognized. We look forward to seeing you again in May. All of you. And now the Morehouse College Glee Club will sing Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing, accompanied by the Elijah McDavid, class of 2015. Gentlemen, please. Dr. Morrow, may those lovely sounds spring eternal here at Morehouse College from the Glee Club. Outstanding performance again. I believe there are one or two people that I need to mention or acknowledge whose presence we are pleased to share today in this audience, one of which, of course, is Mrs. Faye Davidson, the wife of our board chair, Robert Davidson. Faye, would you please stand up? And I believe that I saw Dr. Samuel Du Bois Cook, adding to the gravitas to this side of the room. Dr. Cook, would you please stand? Former president of Dillard University, and his lovely wife as well. Thank you, sir. It's now my pleasure to ask Dr. Robert Claude Davidson, chairman of the Board of Trustees and member of the class of 1967, to come to the podium. Chairman Davidson.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Dr. Sheftal, I want to thank you for adding my wife to that list of recognitions this morning, because on this Valentine's Day, if you had not called her name, I would not have had a pleasant evening. So I thank you very much. On behalf of the Morehouse College Board of Trustees, I am honored to welcome you to this celebration of the 146th anniversary of the founding of this college. Dr. Benjamin Elijah Mays, who served as the 6th president of Morehouse, said, "A college must be judged not only by excellent teachers, but by the spirit and philosophy which permeate it from top to bottom." As to Dr. Mays' first criterion, excellent teachers, Morehouse has and continues to attract many of the finest educators in the world, men and women who are both called and committed to the fine art of developing young men's character as well as their intellectual capacity. Proof of the effectiveness of our faculty are the outstanding graduates Morehouse produces year after year, men whose presence make a difference wherever they are. As to Mays' other criteria, spirit and philosophy, Morehouse has and continues to be guided by a commitment to scholarship, leadership, and service. Ideals that permeate the institution, ideals that are ingrained in our students, ideals that are evident in the lives of our graduates. And so today, even as we celebrate our proud past, we set our sights on creating an even brighter future. Each of us, alumni and staff included, must commit ourselves to supporting our new president as he focuses on the continuous development of faculty and the shaping of students who will represent this college and themselves well, while providing leadership in the global community. Happy Founders Day. Thank you. As chairman of the Morehouse College Board of Trustees, it is my high honor to introduce to this Founders Day Convocation audience the 11th president of the college. A product of two parents who attended HBCUs, Dr. John Sylvanus Wilson, Jr. is a proud member of the class of 1979 of Morehouse College. He furthered his education at Harvard University, where he earned 2 master's degrees in theological studies and education, as well as a doctorate degree in education. His professional career began in 1985 at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, where he served for 16 years excelling as a fundraiser. Our president managed 2 outstanding capital campaigns where he raised nearly $3 billion. Dr. Wilson, during his stint in Boston, also served as the president of the Boston chapter of the National Alumni Association. Under his leadership, the chapter raised in excess of $1 million in outreach. In acknowledgement of his impact, the chapter named the John Wilson Leadership Award to recognize Morehouse students who demonstrate the characteristics of transformative leadership. When Dr. Wilson left Boston, he did so to accept a position at George Washington University. There, he served in a number of capacities over an 8-year span, including executive dean and associate professor. His work involved research and strategy development and best practices for sustainability and advancement. Next stop, the White House. In 2009, Dr. Wilson was appointed by President Barack Obama to serve as the executive director of the White House Initiative on HBCUs. As a liaison between the White House, 32 federal agencies, and the private and philanthropic sector, Dr. Wilson spearheaded efforts to promote HBCU excellence, innovation, and sustainability. A former trustee of Spelman College and a consultant for several educational-based foundations, including the UNCF Institute for Capacity Building, Dr. Wilson has rightfully earned his reputation as a scholar, educator, fundraiser. Morehouse, help me welcome our 11th president, husband of Dr. Carol Espy Wilson, father of Ayanna, Aisha, and Jay, a man of focus with a mind created for strategy. Dr. John Sylvanus Wilson, Jr.
Thank you. Please be seated. Good morning. Thank you, Chairman Davidson. To each and every witness in this place, I say good morning and welcome. Welcome to this Founders Day convocation. It is my pleasure to stand before you as the 11th president of this institution as we celebrate our 146th anniversary. First and foremost, on this Valentine's Day, I too acknowledge your First Lady and my first and only lady. Carol, would you please stand again? And we have members of the Espy family. Would you please stand? These are my folks, please. In-laws, all right. Thank you. Now, I'm going to go off script a little bit because I had a surprise this morning. I want to take you back to a surprising point, a pivotal point in my life. I finished Morehouse, had just finished Harvard Divinity School, and wasn't sure which way I was going to go, wasn't sure which way God was leading me. But I knew I had a passion for education, and I heard about a professor over there at Harvard University School of Education who was a Morehouse man. And I met with him, and he shepherded me through a master's degree and a doctorate degree and through much of my career. And he got on a plane this morning at 4 o'clock in the morning from up there in the Harvard area and came down here. And I would like to ask him to stand. His name is Dr. Charles Vert Willie, and as he stands, I want you to know, Dr. Willie, where is he? Stand up. Here he is right here. Hold on. Before you applaud, I want you to understand something. If you had not been there, I would not be here. Thank you. Now, before introducing our guest speaker this morning, I have been asked to share with you a snapshot of what I think will guide us on the road ahead. I've already told you about 2013 and how it is a very special year to begin a presidency of Morehouse College because it is a powerfully symbolic anniversary year with the 150th of freedom, the 100th anniversary of Morehouse being known as Morehouse, and the 50th anniversary of the Dream. I have already urged us to revisit the seminal idea of the talented 10th, a powerful concept originally authored not by W.E.B. Du Bois, but by Henry Lyman Morehouse. And yes, I've already called for a transformation of this campus. We shall develop and advance a sustainable case for unprecedented investment in this campus. We shall. But beyond all of that, and that which I call the science and the art of surging toward prominence, beyond all of that, I want you to know that I have been, in these first 13, 14 days, I've been doing a lot of listening and listening and listening, and I want you to know that I can hear you. There is a distinctive yearning that can be heard on and beyond this campus. I can hear far too many of our current students hoping, while you strive to be what you were created to be, many of you are yearning, hoping that this campus will soon and more thoroughly be the sacred place that we were created to be. I can hear far too many young alumni whispering, Morehouse is a better place to be from than at. I can hear far too many of our older alumni and friends wondering what might soon be the yield of old promises and current plans and new pathways for Morehouse. And I can hear all of you asking me to lead a grand effort to make us better. That's all it is. Just make us better. And more to the point, to honor the founders and to acknowledge that we have much unfinished business here, I can hear you all saying, Morehouse must be Morehouse. And it's just that simple. I've been listening to the faculty and to the students and to the staff. And that's how I translate all of it. Morehouse must be Morehouse. And the alumni are saying Morehouse must be Morehouse. Atlanta is saying that, and Georgia is saying that. And America is saying Morehouse must be Morehouse. And the world is saying Morehouse must be Morehouse. And with your help, and on my watch, we will get stronger, and Morehouse shall be Morehouse. That is a mandate from Almighty God. And as I preside over this sacred campus, I realize that of me, nothing more is required, and nothing less will do. And now to the task at hand. Members of the Board of Trustees, distinguished guests, faculty, staff, students, and friends of this institution, it is my privilege to introduce our speaker for the Morehouse College Founders Day Convocation, celebrating our 146th anniversary. Dr. Bobby Donaldson is not only a professor of history at the University of South Carolina, Columbia, but he is a noted historian and publisher and published author. As a teacher and researcher, his expertise and interests lie in Southern history as well as African American life and culture. Dr. Donaldson's book, In Our Own Defense, Black Intellectuals in the Jim Crow South, is forthcoming as part of the John Hope Franklin series from the University of North Carolina Press. And even more intriguing to this Morehouse audience is his contribution to the greatly anticipated biography of the Reverend William Jefferson White, founder of Morehouse College. A graduate of Wesleyan University and Emory University, where he received a PhD degree in American history, Dr. Donaldson has published articles and essays, and he has been a consultant for a variety of projects, including the PBS series, Slavery and the Making of America. And he continues to serve as a history consultant to historic Springfield Village Park in Augusta, and as the co-chair of a documentary project examining the quest for civil rights and social justice in Columbia and beyond in South Carolina. Dr. Donaldson was an editorial assistant for Emory University's Martin Luther King Papers Project, a fellow at the W.E.B. Du Bois Institute for African and African American Research at Harvard, and winner of the Organization of American Historians Nathan Huggins Benjamin Quarles Award. A proud member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, Dr. Donaldson is also a member of the Board of Trustees at Wesleyan, the Association for the Study of African American Life and History, and the Organization of American Historians. Please allow me to present to you our Founders Day Convocation speaker, Dr. Bobby J. Donaldson.
Good morning. To Dr. Wilson, to Chairman Davison, and members of the Board of Trustees, to distinguished platform guests, especially my colleague in the Vineyard of History, Dr. Marcellus Barksdale, and the Reverend Hardy Bennings of Augusta, to fellow faculty and staff of Morehouse, to all alumni, to all parents, to the men of Morehouse, and especially the class of 2013. I also want to acknowledge Dr. Willie and Dr. Du Bois Cook, and also one of my Harvard office mates, Dr. James Heffner, who's here joining us today. I am honored to be here at the 146th Founders Day program, and I particularly want to salute one of Morehouse's historians, Dean Lawrence Carter, for the invitation to be here today. I have greatly admired Dean Carter over the years, and he's followed me since I was a little boy coming to this very spot. Dean Carter extended an invitation, but he's told me to restrain my Baptist inclinations and to be brief. Now, that's difficult for a historian who's writing a biography of the founder. But today I will put my Baptist affiliation to the side and give you a short rendition of the history of William Jefferson White. Now, ever before I went into an archives to examine the career of the founder of Morehouse, his name, his reputation called me. Inside your program is a portrait of William J. White. 35 years ago or so, I sat as a 5-year-old boy at a church that stood on the corner of Hopkins Street and 9th Street, today James Brown Boulevard, in Augusta. It was a church in which I grew up, and on the wall were a series of portraits of great figures. the pastor of our church, one of the great teachers of the community, and the portrait of William J. White. And here I was, a 5-year-old kid intrigued that the elders of the church reported that he was the founder of our congregation. Now, at the time, I did not wear glasses, but I could see that picture clearly. And here I am looking. He is the founder of our church on the corner of Hopkins and James Brown Boulevard. This is a Black Baptist church. I'm looking at the portrait. He is the founder of our church. And everyone confirmed that William J. White was indeed the founder. And as a 5-year-old kid, I said, how is it that this white man, who looked white to me, there was no other way to describe him, was the founder? And I must say, ladies and gentlemen, for the last 35 years, I have been on a pursuit to understand how it was that this man founded not only Harmony Baptist Church, but Morehouse College. I had a tutorial on his life in 1996 when I was a student at Emory University. I traveled to Detroit, Michigan, and I stayed in the home of a woman whose name was Josephine Harold Love, Spelman College class of 1933. Mrs. Love was the granddaughter of William J. White. And for 3 or 4 days, I sat with her and absorbed the history of this man, adding great detail to his life, and answering those questions that perplexed me as a young child in Augusta. It is outlined in your program. William Jefferson White, born Christmas Day, 1832, in a small town in Elbert, Georgia. His father was a prominent white planter. His mother was Cheney, a woman of mixed ancestry. It is unclear whether or not William J. White was born a slave or not. It's unclear of the relationship between his mother and his father. But what is clear is that the passion for education and the thirst for knowledge of this young man came from Cheney, his mother. In 1885, William White was here in Atlanta, and he reflected on his journey. Here was a man who was born before the Emancipation Proclamation, and he reminded the audience from which he came. These are his words: "The love of freedom in the human heart is ineradicable as life itself. How well do I remember the intense anxiety and earnest prayers of our Father that God would send deliverance. My first knowledge of slavery and freedom were gained by listening to 2 colored women whispering as they were washing, wondering if freedom would ever come. They did not know that this boy was paying attention to what they were saying. Oh, how in later years have I and the fathers prayed that the days of slavery might pass away and the glorious sun of freedom arise on our land. In the 1850s, William White found his way to Augusta. Now, if you look at the portrait of William White, he arrives in Augusta as an anonymous individual we're told. And at the time, William White had a fundamental choice. He comes to Augusta, and the question is, on which side does he cast his lot? He had a choice. He could either assume the identity for which most people thought he would, to be white, or cast his lot with the stones the builders rejected. In the 1850s, the founder of Morehouse College chose to be black. He calculated and elected to be a race man. Now, his family offers another piece of the puzzle. They argue that in the 1850s, as he was a carpenter, he was dispatched to a prominent home in downtown Augusta, and a very attractive black woman caught his eye. And the story goes that William White knew that if he wanted to have an open public relationship with young, attractive Josephine, that he might elect to be a man of color. He and Josephine married in the 1850s, and they become members of her church, the historic Springfield Church. While at Springfield, William White works as a carpenter and as an undertaker for a local funeral home. While working at the funeral home and while serving at Springfield, the founder of Morehouse College engages in one of his first acts of civil disobedience. He breaks the laws of the state of Georgia, which forbid the teaching of African American people in clandestine schools. In the dark of the night, William White begins to pass on the lessons of his mother to the young black men and women of Augusta in the 1850s. He begins to organize a Sunday school. And then in the fall of 1866, a former enslaved resident of Augusta named Richard Coulter is dispatched from Washington, D.C. to begin to create educational institutions in the South that would train the preachers and teachers of the colored race. And Mr. Coulter comes to Augusta, and he ascends the steps of a funeral home in search of William J. White. Mr. Coulter says to White, quote, "You are the only man I know that can do anything with this mission. And so I've come to you to turn it over. If anyone can do it, you can." That conversation was the very beginnings of Morehouse College. William White, when reflecting on that moment, said the following: "It was one of the most inspiring experiences of my life." And here he is now about the business of recruiting the first generation of Morehouse men. A majority of the men, he said, were older than myself. So at this point, William White is in his mid-30s. So the first cohort of Morehouse men seeking education are in their 30s and 40s. 37 names were enrolled, he said, and these are his words: "About the middle of February 1867, I think it was the 14th day, Thursday, February 14th, 1867, I organized the school and sent the enrollment to Washington, requesting that a teacher be sent as promised. But the word came back, Dr. Wilson, Thank you for your enthusiasm. Thank you for your interest. But we have no teacher and we have no money to help you in our cause. But here is William White, the carpenter, begin to lay the foundation of Morehouse College. So Reverend Bennings, he goes to your board of deacons, and it's the board of deacons of Springfield Church who begin to raise the money to support the mission of training a new generation of young men to be leaders in Augusta. In the 1870s, Joseph T. Robert becomes the president of what was then the Augusta Baptist Institute. And some years ago, when I was doing research on this project, I traveled to Providence, Rhode Island. And there I found a series of letters from Mr. Roberts' daughter, Maddie. And she said the following about those early years of Augusta Baptist Institute. She said, these men seem to feel that they are enjoying some precious privilege which may at any day be snatched from their grasp and never again offered them. And she talked about the hunger of these young men, recognizing that this education at Morehouse College would be the door toward the future. In 1866, William White helps to establish the Georgia Equal Rights Convention to make real the words of the Emancipation Proclamation, which said that we shall be forever free. He becomes a founder of the Georgia Republican Party. Let me repeat that. He is a founder of the Georgia Republican Party. He was a Freedmen's Bureau agent who traveled across the South to establish schools. One of those young men who was influenced by William White was an AME bishop whose name was William H. Hurd, who in 1867 watched White come into his town. And these are Reverend Hurd's words. He says, he was the first colored man I'd ever seen who was well educated and who could use the King's English readily, accurately, and convincingly. He very much influenced me. I was determined from that night to be a man and to fill an important place in life's arena. At the same time, another young man in Augusta watched up close the leadership of William White. He watched William White produce a local newspaper called the Georgia Baptist. And the young boy would come to the Georgia Baptist office and stare in the window and marvel at these young black men setting type and creating a newspaper. And he said that scene alone convinced him that he must expand his horizons. That young man who watched that scene was named John Hope, who later became president of this institution. One of John Hope's colleagues said William J. White held 100,000 people in the hollow of his hand by dint of his leadership. And that man's name was W.E.B. Du Bois. One final witness to the work of William White was a CME bishop named Lucius Hulsey, who was the founder of Payne College in Augusta. These are Hulsey's words. He says, perhaps no man in the state has done more to advance the educational interests of the people of color than he. For years, he traveled, he lectured, not only for the people of color, but for all people. All along, from pulpit to platform, with tongue and pen, he has battled for the rights of men, the freedom of the people, and the redemption of the race from ignorance, from wrong, from those oppressive and repressive measures that have been against their advancement in Christian civilization. But as you hear these tributes to William J. White, these accolades, I also want you to know that these were done not without struggle and not without indignity. As you study more deeply the life of William J. White, you will recognize the supreme sacrifices that were made in his quest to advance justice and education and equality. One vivid scene in May of 1900, after returning back from Atlanta for a series of meetings here at Atlanta Baptist College, Spelman Seminary, and Atlanta University, he served on the board of trustees of all three schools. He comes back to Augusta, and he hears of the lynching of a young man who is dismembered, whose body is left dangling because the young man dared to challenge segregation in public transportation. And in the Georgia Baptist newspaper that William J. White publishes, he condemns the violence. He condemns white supremacy openly and directly. And for that, speaking truth to power, William White is widely condemned in the black press, in the white press. In mid-May of 1900, there is a mob of 400 people who leave downtown Augusta and storm their way up to the home of William White, which is next to the office of the Georgia Baptist Institute. When they get there, the entire home of White is surrounded by his black neighbors. He is not home. His wife is there. And Claudia Harrell, who is the wife of a distinguished professor here on Morehouse campus, writes that it was her mother who rarely spoke, who said that if any of them crossed this threshold, it will be their last time. Now, Dean Carter, where is William J. White when all this transpires? Well, you should know your founder was a brilliant strategist. He heard tell that the mob was descending on his community. So William White makes a dash toward the other side of town, and he convinces himself that the safest place for him to be at that moment is in jail. William J. White checks himself in jail and convinces the chief of police that this was where he should be in the meantime. I believe, Dean Carter, that was on a Thursday. And he remained in jail, convinced that any effort on his part would just stir up trouble. But on Sunday morning, the jailhouse opened. And the preacher left the prison and went to his pulpit. And the paper said his sermon was, "Walk in love." Here was a man who was literally and figuratively baptized by the fire. In 1906, following the example of W.E.B. Du Bois and the Niagara Movement, William J. White helped create what was called the Georgia Equal Rights Convention. It was a civil rights organization that called for justice and peace, improved conditions in public education, and he surrounded himself by influential leaders including John Hope, Hendrick McNeil Turner, E.R. Carter of the Friendship Church, Peter James Bryant of the Wheat Street Church here in Atlanta, and a young preacher named Adam Daniel Williams, who was the grandfather of Martin Luther King Jr. In February of 1906, they gathered in Macon to pen a document calling for increased civil rights protests. They said, quote, "We must agitate, complain, protest, and keep protesting against the invasion of our manhood rights. We must besiege the courts. We must carry our cases to the highest levels of influence. And we should never cease until the gates of opportunity come flying open." Now that was February of 1906. In September of that same year, all the hopes that White had penned in that letter were put on the sideline. In September of that year, this very city became a cauldron of violence. The Atlanta race riot, where over 20 individuals were murdered. But the consequences of that riot spurred throughout the region. And they found consequences of this riot in Augusta as well. The local paper, spurred on by a group called the Ku Klux Klan, called for William White to be dismissed, permanently exiled from the city, or face death. Here, the founder of Morehouse again decides to leave the city. But while he's gone, he writes a letter to one of his children. And I want to read the letter to show you what manner of man is this. This is October of 1906. At this trying time, I have no harsh words for those who would harm me, if there be any. God may allow my life to be taken, but it will not be because of my being an evildoer. He has allowed the lives of his faithful servants to be taken in the past, and he may allow mine to be taken, but be this as it may, I have already made a record of service to him and to the people of which I am not ashamed, and which cannot be blotted out. Of course, these fiery trials are not pleasant times, but I am neither cast down nor dismayed. The God whom I have trusted and served is able to shield me if it is his purpose. Let thy will, not mine, Lord, be done. In the spring of 1913, William J. White recognized that his time on earth was short. And he writes a letter to Atlanta, and he sends a letter to John Hope, the president of Atlanta Baptist College. And he says, "Dear Mr. Hope, for a time I may remain around, and then I may take the train for another and perhaps better land any day." On April the 13th, the lion went to rest. Nearly 3,000 mourners assembled at historic Springfield Church for what one reporter called the largest funeral ever witnessed in that city. Charles T. Walker, the great black Spurgeon, delivered the eulogy. Silas Floyd, a graduate of Atlanta University, said William J. White was not selfish with what he had been taught, but imparted as best he could what he had learned to his less fortunate. And then, in perhaps a fitting tribute, hundreds of children from the local school district surround his grave and drop roses as they pass by. 1913. A few years before, at Cell Chapel, William White left his parting words to an audience just as this. He said, "I have no personal ambition to gratify in connection with this school. I care nothing about being called a founder. What I did in the beginning was not self-seeking. No thought or honor or reward was in my mind, nor is there any such feeling now. But if there's anything I want, I want it said that when I meet God at the judgment bar, I shall hear him say, 'Servant, well done.'" And today, as we gather to recognize this history, today as we look at the long life of William White, we can say, "Servant, well done." It was his granddaughter, Josephine Love, who stood in this room some years ago, who looked right here at the graduating class, and she said, "You are the issue of his passion for justice and his indomitable faith in the power of mankind to improve itself. You must finish the work left undone. You must serve the present age." And so today, as we reflect on the legacy of William J. White, today as we reflect on this carpenter, this builder, this teacher, this preacher, this writer, this mentor, this victim and this victor, we lift up the words that were sung in Cell Chapel generations ago. "Men, keep your lamps trimmed and burning. The time is drawing near. Darker midnight lies ahead of you, for the time is drawing nigh. Lo, the morning is breaking, the time is drawing nigh. Men of Morehouse, remember your legacy. Do not grow weary in what you're well doing. Keep your lamp trimmed and burning. See what the Lord has done. See what the Lord has done. Keep your lamps trimmed and burning, and forever uphold the legacy of Morehouse College." Thank you very much.
Great historians don't just record the events and people of the past, they bring them to life. Thank you, Dr. Donaldson, for bringing to life our early history. President Wilson, will you join me at the podium, please? Morehouse will now confer upon Hamilton E. Holmes, MD, the honorary degree, Doctor of Humane Letters, posthumously. Mr. President, it's my privilege to present to you Mr. Michael Holmes, who will accept the honorary Doctorate of Humane Letters on behalf of his brother, Dr. Hamilton E. Holmes. Michael.
Will the Holmes family please stand at this point? Any members of the family? Mr. Michael Holmes and other members of the family of Dr. Hamilton E. Holmes, it is my great privilege to make this presentation today. The country watched as Hamilton Holmes stepped into the spotlight as one of an inaugural pair of African American students to gain admission to the University of Georgia, paving the way for legions of African American students who desire and deserve to matriculate at the institution. And once again, he was in the national spotlight when he became the first African American student to earn a medical degree from Emory University. We were proud of Dr. Holmes then, and his life of service as an orthopedic surgeon and medical professor made us even prouder. In acknowledgement of his unwavering commitment to civil rights and social justice, as well as for his pursuit of educational and professional excellence, Morehouse is pleased to posthumously recognize the life and work of Dr. Holmes by bestowing upon him its highest institutional award. Therefore, by the authority granted me by the Morehouse College Board of Trustees, I confer upon Dr. Hamilton E. Holmes the honorary degree Doctor of Humane Letters with all the rights, privileges, and responsibilities appertaining thereunto. Congratulations.
Morehouse will now present to Dr. Frank Smith the Presidential Renaissance Medal. Dr. Smith, will you please come to the podium?
Today it is my privilege to present the Presidential Renaissance Medallion, the highest award issued by the president of the college, to Dr. Frank Smith, whose work continues to advance Morehouse and society at large. Those who receive this honor will have proven their commitment to uplifting humanity and demonstrated excellence in all they do. Dr. Frank Smith, founder of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC, left Morehouse in his senior year to immerse himself in the civil rights movement. He is known for his roles as a planner of marches and protests in Mississippi during the freedom marches of the summer of 1964. Dr. Smith returned to school and in 1980 earned a doctorate degree from Union Institute in Ohio. He remained active in civic matters, eventually running for public office in the District of Columbia, where he ultimately became a member of the Board of Education and a 4-term city councilman. In 1998, Dr. Smith became chairman and CEO of the organization that established the African American Civil War Memorial and the accompanying museum, the only memorial to African American troops who fought in the Civil War. Dr. Frank Smith, in recognition of your ongoing contributions to Morehouse and the community at large, it is my privilege to present to you the Morehouse College Presidential Renaissance Medallion. You move over here.
At this time, we are pleased to recognize students who have demonstrated their facility in oratory. Dr. Otis Moss Jr., would you please come to the podium to present the awards to the winners of the 2013 Otis Moss Jr. Oratorical Contest. Dr. Moss.
President Wilson, Provost Sheftal, Chair of our board, Mr. Davidson, members of the class 2013, men of Morehouse, alumni, friends, staff, and faculty. First Lady, Dr. Wilson. Dr. Wilson, let me take a point of privilege to say that your journey has carried you from Morehouse to the White House, and now you return to Morehouse. And when you go back to the White House, you will be President Wilson speaking president to president. Thank you, and thank God for your journey and our blessing. I would like to ask Dr. Ann Watts, President Wilson, and Chair of our Board of Trustees, Mr. Davidson, to come and stand with us as we honor and recognize the winners of the 2013 Otis Moss Jr. Oratorical Contest. Dr. Watts, if you will present the honorees for the year 2013, I will give a paragraph at the close.
Thank you, Dr. Moss. The topic for the 2013 Otis Moss Jr. Oratorical Contest this year, of course, was Men of Morehouse, responding to the call for action in civic engagement for decimation of urban apathy and nonfeasance. The students had to research the topic, write their 4-minute speeches, and present their speeches without any coaching or any assistance. 8 students went on to the finals here in King Chapel last week, and if you missed it, you missed a marvelous presentation. The panel of judges, consisting of Morehouse faculty and staff, voted as follows. Gentlemen, if you will stand, and as I call your names, move quickly to the stage. Seth Brown, first place, junior. Winford K. Rice, junior, second place. Michael Adams, junior, third place. James Pratt, junior, senior, third place. We had a tie for third place. Fanon Brown, fourth place, sophomore. Denzel Fields, fourth place, sophomore. We had 2 ties for fourth place. Jarvis Gray, junior, honorable mention. We had ties for honorable mention. Deshaun Jones, senior, honorable mention.
Okay, here we go, right here. Once again. And great.
To the winners and participants of the Otis Moss Jr. Oratorical Contest 2013. It was 53 years ago, when Frank Smith and I left this campus to go to jail for civil rights and human rights. 53 years ago, we began a special march from this center. We started a march that you must continue. When I graduated from Morehouse College, Adam Clayton Powell, Jr. was our commencement speaker. He said to us on that day, "You must go from here with a sense of mission. Martin Luther King Jr. is waiting for you to come and march with him." And my graduation year from seminary, Dr. Mays gave the charge and said, "Die poor if need be, in chains if necessary, but never compromise the integrity of your soul." Remember the words of Van Dyke. It is better to stand in the shadow of the best than to remain content with the worst. In my next birthday, a few days from now, I will be 78 years old. So I see sunset and you see sunrise. We need your voice to speak clearly, with moral courage, not just to win an oratorical contest, but to win a better world. Remembering the words I have quoted many times, when a word must be spoken to further a good cause, and those whom it behooves to speak remain silent. Anybody ought to speak and break the silence, because sometimes one word can further the welfare of a nation when those whom it behooved to speak remained silent. Speak for us when our bones are waxing old in the earth. Men of Morehouse, speak for justice. Speak with love. Speak with courage. Thank you, and God bless you.
Today's convocation is a continuation of a series of exciting events that span the weekend. On Friday, that's today, or tomorrow rather, the 15th, at 11 a.m., the college will host the unveiling of the Black Heritage Postal Stamp honoring the Emancipation Proclamation Stamp Series. This unveiling will take place in the lobby of this chapel. Also on Friday, Morehouse will host a symposium and town hall meeting where the theme will be educating black students throughout the academic pipeline. President Wilson and Grammy and Stella award-winning gospel singer and artist Marvin Sapp will be among the panelists. The Founders Day concert will be held Friday in the Martin Luther King Jr. Chapel, again in this chapel, at 8 p.m., featuring Eric Benet and Avery Sunshine. Tickets are available at Ticketmaster.com. On Saturday morning, we will have Reflections of Excellence at 11 a.m. in the Ray Charles Center for the Performing Arts. The 2013 Benny and Candle Award recipients will be featured. The moderator is Tracy Hudgens, anchor, CBS Atlanta's Better Morning. This event is open to the public and free of charge. We are encouraging our students to participate, in particular, to come out to hear our Benny and Candle awardees speak about their roads to excellence and how they overcame the obstacles to excel and achieve. You will not want to miss this event. On Saturday evening, our 25th annual Candle in the Dark Gala will begin at 7:30 p.m. in the Centennial Ballroom of the Hyatt Regency Hotel in downtown Atlanta. The honorary co-chairs for the silver anniversary are Morehouse alumnus and award-winning actor Samuel L. Jackson and Douglas Bronstein, vice chairman of J.P. Morgan Chase and Company. The master of ceremonies is actor Dennis Haysbert. Our 2013 Benny and Candle Award recipients will be honored at this time. The Founders Day worship service will be held on Sunday morning here in the chapel at 11 a.m. The Reverend Willie Francois III, Associate Pastor of the Wheeler Avenue Baptist Church in Houston, Texas, is the speaker. On Sunday afternoon at 4 p.m., we will have the Morehouse College Glee Club Spring Concert under the direction of Dr. David E. Morrow. This event is also held in King Chapel and is also free. It's free admission. After we stand and sing the Morehouse College hymn, we ask that you please be seated for instructions from Dr. Watts concerning the recessional and scanning. So if you would, please stand as we sing the hymn. Please be seated. Please be seated. Gentlemen, please be seated. Dr. Watts.
Will all persons with scanners come inside the room, please, and come down to my right? All persons with scanners, please come down front and to my right. The platform party will recess, stage left,